Well, Professor Colbert, the bail system, that initial appearance in court symbolizes how much the system cares about the people who come before it as accused of crime. This is when you find out the moral bankruptcy of our so-called criminal justice system. In Maryland, for example, the system is so morally bankrupt that we didn't even supply lawyers until your good work started. And so only people who could afford having a lawyer at a bail hearing, who got a lawyer soon enough at a bail hearing, would be represented at this extraordinarily critical stage of the proceeding. The system was so bankrupt morally that we did not regard bail as a critical stage, even though if you did not make bail, you would be in jail for periods of time which very often would eclipse what the sentence in the case would be if you were guilty. And if you were innocent, it was just horrendous to have to spend time behind bars in a cage instead of going about the business of leading your life or living your life, being a father, being a provider, being an active member of a community, taking care of business as a human being. And so the shock to me when I first started practicing law was that the system cared so little about people that they ground them up and spit them out without even giving them the benefit of a lawyer at this extraordinarily critical stage. Now, why is it a critical stage? First of all, you have no business locking up people because they have been accused. In rare circumstances, you should release them when you can prove that they're extraordinarily dangerous, likely to be a recidivist, etc. But in most cases, that's not what we do. That has nothing to do with the ultimate determination of whether a person stays in jail. The determinant is cash. And so this system is represented at the first instance by how much justice can you afford. Let me list the ways that pretrial detainees get hurt when they don't make bail immediately. They lose their job. If they're in school, they lose that semester. They may even lose the entire year. They lose contact with their little children. Their children suffer emotionally, grievously, because they now see their father differently. They now see him behind bars. It's a serious question whether you ought to even bring them there to see daddy under those circumstances. They lose all kinds of options that they would ordinarily have during that period of incarceration to progress in their life. There are countless things they lose. And so this is why it is a critical stage. This is why it's always been a critical stage. And this is why the judiciary shows its true colors in terms of its regard for human beings by not recognizing that it's a critical stage.
Who loses?
Defendants who don't make bail lose the power to do prompt investigations. You handcuff a man by putting him in a cage instead of letting him be free to guide his lawyer to the eyewitnesses, to the people who know what really happened, to the witnesses who can cause him to be exonerated. This is utterly unfair. And so now the lawyer is investigating a case with one hand tied behind his back. Second, you lose the power to help him, or he loses the power to marshal the resources to hire a lawyer in a system where you get only the justice that you can afford. So you cripple his ability to continue to support his family and to marshal the resources to hire private counsel. First of all, it's all economics at the bail hearing. If you're poor, you get screwed. If you're just barely making it, you get screwed. If you've got extra money, you can get the person out. But here's where the double whammy comes in. Under the bail system, the courts favor bail bondsmen. They favor the posting of insurance bonds where the premium is non-refundable. So if the bail, for example, is the outrageous sum of $100,000, it's going to cost you $10,000 that you'll never get back. And so we have impoverished the family. They can't hire private counsel, and they're behind a bigger 8-ball because of the bail system that we follow. Now, if you're really broke, forget about it. Nobody cares about you. You will languish unless the court requires a lawyer to be appointed. And it's got to be a real lawyer. It can't be a pretend lawyer. It can't be somebody who just shows up and does a routine job, goes home to his family, enjoys his freedom. It's got to be somebody with empathy. That's the great tragedy, that the law in Maryland is favorable to bail, but people behave as though it is not. Judges don't behave properly in terms of the presumption of release. And that's great law. It ought to be followed, but it's followed more in the breach. Lawyers don't articulate the legal principles that have been a bedrock part of Maryland law for ages because they don't care enough. They don't read the cases. They don't have pocket briefs, which they update religiously as cases come down from the Court of Special Appeals to the Court of Appeals. They don't practice at a high level of professionalism so that they put the judge on the defensive right from the beginning. They assert the power of the law in a powerful way, and they rigorously investigate the facts surrounding this particular individual's need and right to bail in a way that is compelling and powerful. You don't see that. So everyone who wants to know the true nature of both the law and its application and the bar's response to applying the law needs to sit in bail hearings, and you'll walk away totally disillusioned with how little people care about one another. You've got to confront the evil of the situation. Bail is based on the premise that you are presumed innocent, and that unless and until a court of law, a jury in particular in criminal cases, takes away your liberty after proof beyond a reasonable doubt, you are a free man or a free woman. But we laugh at that principle from the beginning of the process. Let's go to federal court, for example, where the whole process has been radicalized. Instead of a presumption of innocence, there's a presumption of guilt, all because of Richard Nixon and right-wing Republicans who think it's always the other guy who gets in trouble. It's never going to be them. And who are usually in a position to pay the money to provide the court with the assurance that there is something at stake which will prevent them from fleeing. Despite the fact that 98% of the people who we put bonds on appear for trial when scheduled, even in the most serious cases, you know, where the statistics show that you don't really need to put bails on people. They're going to show up. So we see the brutality of the system at work right from the beginning, and it is particularly brutal in federal court. And you are presumed dangerous, depending on the nature of the criminal allegation. So if it's a drug offense or a gun offense or a crime of violence, you are presumed dangerous from the beginning. You have to rebut the presumption. You are presumed to be a risk of flight. That's how radical the system has become because of the right-wing element in America. And so it turns the presumption of innocence on it, literally on its head, the whole foundation of our system. And so you've got to have a heart, you've got to have a conscience, you got to really care about that individual you're just meeting. It takes a special kind, it takes a special kind of person to care about a stranger. It takes a special kind of person to translate a commitment from a set of principles into action on behalf of somebody you've just met. It takes a special kind of person to have that level of empathy where you really feel the pain of injustice inflicted on somebody you don't even know. These are special people. Most people don't have it in them to be special like that. They see the same old person in the same place, in the same situation, with the same outcome. They get used to it. You know, it isn't that they're bad people. They're just unempathetic people, uncaring people. In certain situations, they do the right thing, But they have assumed the responsibility of representing the vital interests of complete strangers. You better do it to the best of your ability.